everyone. My name is Dr. Jessica Henry, and I am going to be talking to you today about wrist fracture rehab. I am a certified hand therapist, neurospecialist, and orthopedic manual therapist for the upper extremity, and I am also the owner of Hands on Neuro Rehab's hand therapy tools. I am often seeing distal radius fractures, maybe 20 of them a week because it happens very, very often. If you didn't know, it's one of the most common fractures for the upper extremity and just in general. So oftentimes a distal radial fracture is sustained after a fall. That means that the person usually puts their hand out. We call it a foosh, fall on an outstretched hand. And that means that this bone usually breaks. Most of the time it's this piece right here. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of a styloid as well. Whenever you do have a wrist fracture, you need to be braced for at least 6 to 8 weeks. Majority of the time, your doctor will give you some type of wrist brace, most of the time a prefabricated one, for at least 6 weeks or so if you're doing a conservative management, and they'll keep doing routine x-rays to see how you heal. And then if it's not one of those things where you pick conservative management because your bone wasn't aligned and you had a little bit of a malalignment where you actually needed surgery or a little bit of help to get those bones touching so you can go ahead and stimulate that bone formation, then most of the time you get a plate or you get some type of pinning or some type of alignment of your surgeon's choosing. So if that is you, then majority of the time, what you're focused on is a little bit of scar management, and you're focused on really trying to work through a lot of that inflammation from the plate and a lot of that trauma from the surgery as well. So oftentimes people will be stiff at the fingers, they'll be stiff at the thumb, they will barely be able to touch their pinky, they'll be weak. And I like to focus on stability after mobility. So the first exercise I'm actually going to give you is for mobility. So when I focus on mobility within the clinic, it is very important to do two separate things, two very important things. We want to do muscle activation exercises, and then we also want to do stuff to stretch the joint and stretch the actual muscle. Two separate things. So what that means is that when we are moving for, let's say we're doing the first one and we're doing muscle activation, if I want to strengthen your wrist extensors, and this is early on and you're around 4 to 6 weeks or so, I'm going to be having you move back with the fingers kind of curled in very lightly. Then when you come down, I'm going to have you kick out the fingers. This is tenodesis. So this just means that I'm activating the right wrist extensor, and then I'm also kicking it out, and I'm also activating the right wrist flexor. And it just helps to improve a little bit of that mobility, some of that fluidity, and then just also help improve some of like that joint kinematics and that muscle activation. Then we got joint stiffness and muscle stiffness, two separate things. As a fieldwork educator and as someone that often takes students and mentors, it's one of the things I love to focus on. So whenever we're focused on doing any type of stretching, because we want to improve mobility, we want to make sure that whenever we're stretching for flexion, we're keeping the wrist extend, like the fingers nice and loosey-goosey. And whenever we're stretching for extension of the wrist too, you can allow those fingers to kind of curl in slightly, but you can kind of give it a good push from here as well. So when you push down here, allow the fingers to kind of curl or extend out. And when you're pushing back, you want to push on the base of the hand, not on the fingers. The fingers always have more give. You want to push on the wrist to really get that stretch within the joint. Now, if we're stretching the muscle, now that's when we're going to add that tension on the fingers, and we're really going to try to get a good stretch. We want a good pull here, and if you notice it's a little bit more tense, and you notice that we really can't extend our fingers too much, we're getting those little contractures where our fingers are slightly bent. It's time to kick that elbow out, add a little bit more stretch in there. Let's say that we're having a little bit of trouble making a fist. If it's not the joint itself and you've had a comprehensive assessment by a certified hand therapist, and it's not the joint itself, or an orthopedic surgeon, and they're telling you that everything's fine with the actual joint, there's no osteoarthritis and things like that, and there's no bony abnormalities, then that means that it's most likely it's going to be muscle or extrinsic tightness. So what we're looking at instead is working into full finger flexion and then rolling it down. We want extra stretch, bring out the elbow, roll it down. So to reiterate, if we want to stretch the muscle, we add a little bit of the fingers, we kick out the elbow, or we roll the fingers all the way down, kick out the elbow, add a little bit more stretch. Whenever we're stretching the joint, we need to make sure that we're putting pressure just by the joint and just by the joint, leaving the fingers completely alone. They're very important for two separate reasons, and they're very crucial reasons in your rehab. So it's important to do all of those so you're not working on that muscle retraining and coordination activities like near the end, or trying to pick up on some of those gaps whenever we are noticing that we have a little bit of a lag when we're coming back because we're using that wrong muscle. One of my other favorite exercises is going to be wrist stability exercises. I love to do a nice isometric grip. So I like to hold the arm out, give it nice front, back, side to side. This is too hard for the patient, have them bend the elbow and do the same thing. You can add a little bit more tension, have them hold it, 1, 2, 3. Remember, the bad hand always goes on the bottom. It's really good to start loading the wrist, so that way you can kind of build that anticipatory movement back. So whenever you're reaching for that milk in your fridge and it goes to drop whenever you're taking it off of the shelf, then at least we have that stability where that wrist kind of contracts and we can hold it instead of it just falling. Most of my patients are often a little confused. They're like, my grip is weak. My grip is weak. It has nothing to do with your grip. It's most of the time your actual wrist that's weak and that needs to be strengthened. Which brings me to my last third exercise, which is going to be functional strengthening. And that's why I'm holding my favorite flex bar. So whenever you're using a flex bar, you can work on jar opening, you can work on towel ringing, but all of these things are going to be good for strengthening those wrist extensor muscles and also making sure you're doing good wrist flexor rehab as well. So all of that stuff adds to the stability of the wrist, adds to the strength of your hand as well, and then gives you back a little bit more function in your day-to-day. The more you know. If you guys are interested in a little bit of guided rehab, we do have more information at handsonneuroRehab.com. We do have telehealth appointments. And then if you guys are interested in some of these tools, we also have a curated home health hand therapy toolkit. So you can follow at home as well. So if you guys are interested and you don't want to go into a outpatient facility and maybe you just want to continue at home, or maybe you had to leave because you're a snowbird and you didn't get to continue at your favorite facility, this is one way for you to at least do rehab without just kind of being kind of flying by yourself and being a little bit insecure about what to do, because I know a lot of people are like, I don't know how much to push it. Like, I will be at least available for you to email. You can always add a comment below on YouTube and I'll go ahead and respond, and I'll give you my best feedback as well. And then if you do need my guided intervention, there is telehealth appointments and daily treatments and things like that available too. So you're not alone in this, and you can definitely get back to all the things that you absolutely loved and adored doing before. This has been Dr. Jessica Henry with Hands on Neuro Rehab's Hand Therapy Tools. The more you know. Thank you guys. Bye.